This is the Nigerian Television Authority, the NTA, and the program is Diplomatic Ties. On Diplomatic Ties this week, we will be taking a critical look at the 2022-2025 strategic plan of the United Nations Development Program, the UNDP. Established on 22nd November 1965, the UNDP is a United Nations organization saddled with the onerous task of helping countries to eliminate poverty and achieve sustainable economic growth and human development. Available statistics has shown that the UNDP is the largest UN development aid agency with meaningful presence in 170 countries. This world's largest aid agency places premium on developing local capacity towards long-term self-sufficiency and prosperity. In the attainment of its goals, the UNDP administers projects to attract investment, technical training, and technological development, and provides experts to help build legal, political institutions and expand the private sector. Assistance is provided at the request of national governments, and UNDP personnel frequently coordinates with local officials, non-governmental organizations, and other international agencies. It is equally on record that the UNDP operates in 125 countries, and it is funded entirely by voluntary contributions from UN member states in order to meet national development objectives. Its activities increasingly focus on fulfilling the Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs. To what extent has the world body been able to achieve its goals in the face of the pandemic and the attainment of the 2022-2025 strategic plan? This is our focus as we play host to the country representative of the UNDP in Nigeria, Mr. Mohammed Yahaya. Mr. Mohammed Yahaya, you're welcome to Diplomatic Ties.
Thank you, and thank you for having me.
I'm Nancy Godi Angunihu. Now, Mr. Yahaya, the 2022-2025 strategic plan is aimed at doing things differently to aspire to greater shared goals. How is the world's largest aid agency actually thinking outside the box, to do things differently?
First, thank you again, and thank you for NTA for having me here. I'm delighted to be here and share our work with the wider public here in Nigeria.
Most welcome. You're most welcome.
So, obviously, we're entering unprecedented times in the world with the pandemic still persisting and the economic lives of people being affected. This pandemic has been both a health but also a socio-economic issue or impact for many people, including Nigerians. So for us, this specific strategic plan is to really help the world build back better, including Nigeria. So for us who are based here in Nigeria, our focus is to look at the government plans and get our strategic plan, essentially our offer to the government plans, to ensure that the country overcomes the challenges of the pandemic, but also overcomes the pre-existing challenges such as health, education, issues around unemployment, youth unemployment specifically, and the impact of climate change on livelihood. So for us, I think the strategic plan is to tell the people of Nigeria, the government of Nigeria, this is what we can do to assist your own plans, and this is our contribution to your plan.
You're actually thinking out of the box, the UNDP.
Absolutely, and we have to. We have to think out of the box because these challenges are new. The pandemic, especially when it comes to the issue of the pandemic and the impact on the pandemic, and we don't know how long it will persist. So it's already impacting, as I said, health. It has really challenged Nigeria's health systems, and Nigeria has been able to respond sufficiently, I would say, in terms of the pandemic. But the challenges that the world is facing, the challenges Nigeria is facing are extremely challenging, and it needs an organization that is able to respond outside the box. So I'll give you an example of what that out-of-the-box thinking will look like.
Doing things differently.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we are now, if you look at the issue of climate change specifically, the world has been asked to develop, and Nigeria has been asked to develop without polluting. But the rest of the world, the history of development, if you look at the more developed nations, they've developed through essentially increasing the carbon monoxide in the air. So for us now, the challenge for Nigeria is what is a green growth look like? How can Nigeria remove the hundreds of the millions of people in poverty while at the same time not polluting or essentially having a green growth agenda? So that is one of the big challenges. What do you do with the 600,000 young graduates entering the job market every year? What do you do with the 5 to 5.5 million Nigerians entering the job market overall, graduates and non-graduates? All these challenges need out-of-the-box thinking.
Thank you.
And this is what we will hopefully be able to put on the table while working closely with both federal and state governments.
Now, UNDP under this strategic plan intends to work together with its partners to achieve its goals at these extraordinary times, actually. Yeah. So what's your take on this?
Partnership, in specifically, absolutely. Yeah. One of the most disappointing part of what we've seen in how we've responded globally to the pandemic is that solidarity was missing. And you see how vaccines, for example, are currently been shared. Many of the rich countries are holding their vaccines. They are not sharing, and you see countries like Africa, I think the figure is about 2% of the African population have been vaccinated. So for us is to remind the global system, and SDG 17 essentially is about partnership. None of the other SDGs, from the SDG 1, which is about poverty, to SDG 16, which is about peace, or anything else we need to do around the SDGs, essentially partnership matters. And for us, it's bringing the international community together, reminding people of the commitment they've made to the SDGs. And in the case of Nigeria, it's saying that government, non-government, all of us have a role in ensuring that Nigeria progresses. So partnership for us that's what it means.
So how is the body, the UNDP, actually supporting governments and communities to rebound from COVID-19 and build forward?
Absolutely. I'm glad you asked that question, because UNDP, together with the entire UN family, were the first to come to the table when the pandemic hit. I'll give you a few examples. The first few months of the pandemic, it was very difficult for the government to even source basic PPEs because they were not locally produced. If you recall, when the pandemic started, I think it was 4 labs that could do PCR testing of COVID.
Yeah, in Nigeria.
In Nigeria. Yes, so the UN family, together with UNDP, were able to come to the table and help the country. What did we do? We used our offices. You mentioned all the offices we have present globally. We're able to call our office in China and say, Nigeria needs this help, and these are the resources the UN will put together. We were the first one outside government to be able to bring PPEs, testing kits, and every other medical equipment that the country needed. Overall, your viewers may want to know that 40% of all medical equipments that Nigeria has received or used were through the UN system. That is what solidarity means. That is what, for us, being with the government and the people, especially in this critical time, has been something that we are very proud of. Example on what we did on the health side. On the non-health side, the socio-economic aspect, if you recall, we had a shutdown of about 5 weeks, and for many Nigerians, this meant that their basic livelihood was interrupted. People who rely day-to-day living were not able to do that. Cross-trade and movement was restricted. All this had a significant impact on people's livelihood. What UNDP did was to really push the cash transfer agenda together with the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs and the state. So, for example, Lagos, Kano, Ebonyi, Imo, I can go on some of the states. We were able to go there and inject significant resources on cash transfer to people to ensure that the economic adverse economic impact of the shutdowns and other things were minimized. So this is the kind of things the UN family and UNDP has been doing to help government cope with the pandemic. Moving forward, what we are saying, and our colleagues in WHO and others are also doing this, is to say, what have we learned from the pandemic? What do we need to help government and the people in Nigeria to make sure that future shocks do not destabilize the country, so that we are not unprepared for future health challenges or economic shocks. And this is the kind of dialogue and debate we're involved with government and also with Nigerians at large.
Let me go back to talking about planetary issue.
Yeah.
How is the UNDP tackling the impacts of climate change and biodiversity loss?
So first, the climate change for me is the most one of the biggest challenges Nigeria will face moving forward. And when people hear climate change, sometimes they don't easily relate. So it's always good to unpack what climate change actually means. Climate change means a cattle keeper or herder is not able to get the pasture they need, and they end up going farther and farther for looking for pasture because of the climate. Yes. For a farmer, it means rain patterns are impacted. 70% of Nigeria's agriculture is rain-fed. So if rains are not coming in the same way they used to come, or there's too much rain or flooding, it means a farmer cannot farm. That directly impacts the livelihood of that farmer and directly impacts the consumers because prices go up. It also means that your ability to breathe the air, if there is a huge pollution in urban areas because we are polluting and we're injecting a lot of carbon dioxide in the air, it means it affects the health of young people or health of everybody. So climate change is a significant challenge the country needs to start dealing with. How is Nigeria doing that? Nigeria is a really, I must say, if you look at all the SDGs, one of the SDGs where we think Nigeria will meet its commitment is on climate change.
Exactly. One,
Nigeria is already very ambitious in what they call nationally determined contribution, the NDCs. So Nigeria reports to the Paris Agreement, as part of the Paris Agreement, its contribution. So Nigeria is trying to reduce its footprint. Although overall Nigeria's pollution rate globally is insignificant, but it's the largest polluter in Africa.
It's insignificant.
Globally.
Yeah.
But in Africa it's the largest polluter. Because it's the largest. Yeah, exactly. You're the giant of Africa. So the giant has to lead by example, and it's doing. So that's one thing. It also means adaptation. There are things that have already cannot be reversed. What we're trying to do is that the globe doesn't become hotter than it already is, but it has already gotten hotter. So what do we do with the livelihood, the impact for the farmer, the herder, etc., for the people who rely on
the ozone layer depletion? Exactly.
So for us, what we're saying, and the government has already taken lead in this, is you need to help people to adapt, right? Because it's not only what Nigeria does. If the global system together, we don't work together to reducing our emissions, communities who live in the coastal towns of around from Lagos to Calabar will be significantly impacted. Sea level rises, people's livelihood, people's life will be in danger. So what we're saying is that with government, we need to start pushing the adaptation agenda. People need to adapt to a world that is already becoming hotter. So this is what we're already doing, working with the Ministry of Environment, working with the states. Just to give you one example, we're working with the government of Lagos we're going to be putting about $40 million to help the government of Lagos to put together an adaptation intervention to make sure people in the coastal part of Lagos are not severely impacted.
And how about enlightenment, of the people?
Absolutely. And
that's what the governments are supposed to be doing with what you're talking about now.
So one of the things that the Ministry of Environment has been really good at is to really push this engagement and communication with the Nigerians. Why climate change and climate change challenges are important for Nigeria? Because it impacts our livelihood. One thing I always say to our colleagues and people we engage is that if you think about the poor in this country, or the poor anywhere in the world, and in Africa specifically, what assets do they have? The only asset the poor have is the environment. The farmer looks at the land. The herder looks for pasture. That is what the poor do, or the people who live off forestry. So if you take the last asset of the poor, which climate change is impacting, what do they do? This is what will happen. People will move to urban areas because they cannot live in their rural environment. Or what you see is conflict because people lose everything they have, and some of those people may want to engage in behaviors that may create insecurity in the country. So this is what we say: climate change has an impact on insecurity, it has an impact on livelihood, and it has an impact on the future the country wants. So it's a very important agenda that the UNDP is engaging with government to make sure that the country contributes to its commitment, or at least meets its commitment.
Very strategic indeed, Mr. Mohammed Yahaya. We will go on a break now. This is Diplomatic Ties, X-raying United Nations Development Programme UNDP 2022-2025 Strategic Plan. How far, so far? And our guest is country representative of the UNDP in Nigeria, Mr. Mohammed Yahaya. So, Mr. Yahaya, what is the place of SDGs and Paris Agreement in the attainment of the 2022-2025 Strategic Plan?
So, the SDGs is the umbrella work, the commitment that everybody has made, and there are 17 goals. And all those, goal 1, for example, I don't want to go through all the goals, but goal 1, which is really important for Nigeria, is we're saying that people should not in the 21st century be living in poverty. We have other goals. People should not be in the 21st century. As a human race, we should not be accepting humans going hungry. We should not accept humans and not have access to basic services such as water, sanitation. So that's what the SDGs are. Yesterday I was in a school here. I visited a school and I met young, dynamic people, and they asked me a similar question. Why should we care about the SDGs? And I said, well, the SDGs about your future. Some of us are already old, but your future of peaceful coexistence is what the SDGs is. The way to describe the 17 goals in a simplified manner is people and planet. What we're saying is that the days of our progress being based on polluting the planet are gone, because this planet is the only planet we have. So for us at the UN system and United Nations Development Programme is to convince our member states that we can actually protect our planet while we create prosperity.
We can protect our
planet and be prosperous.
Exactly. Without
polluting the planet. So this is the agenda of the SDGs. And for us,
it is even the protection of the planet that helps us.
Exactly.
Build the
absolutely,
world.
absolutely. And this is what we are saying. So for UNDP, our signature solution, our strategic plan says, this is the things we can offer to create that balance between prosperity, our people, and prosperity, and the planet. So how do we do that? So we have our goals, our contribution to the goals and contribute to the National Development Plan are around these areas. One, poverty and inequality. What we say is if you have high level of inequality, you have very few people who are getting wealthier and wealthier, and the pandemic actually created more billionaires, while at the same time pushed more people into poverty. For the first time in the history of the Human Development Index that UNDP looks at the condition of the human, what we are finding out is for the first time since records started, the human development has regressed. So what the pandemic has produced is acceleration of inequality. Very few people extremely rich, a lot of people much more poorer. So that balance cannot be sustained. And so our contribution is to reduce poverty and inequality. That's one area. Second is governance systems. How we coexist. How do we share this country? How do we have open participatory systems so that we reduce conflict and instability? And that's the other part of our work. So the governance agenda. And we work very closely, for example, on the coming elections, we'll be supporting the INEC and we'll be supporting civil societies. Then the other area we work is on what we call the green energy, access to energy. Many people are off-grid in this country, and not everybody needs to be on the grid. How do we use solar panels and others to bring people into more cleaner energy, and how to use cleaner energy? So this is the kind of area. Gender inequality is another one. We support and work closely with our partners. And Nigeria is not doing very well on the gender.
Not doing very well.
Not at all. And some other areas that we work very closely with the Minister of Women's Affairs and brilliant Nigerians. The paradox about this country is you produce the most dynamic women who go abroad and do great things. Let me just tell your viewers, 2 of my bosses are Nigerian women. The head of UNDP Africa is a Nigerian woman. and the Deputy Secretary General of this country is a Nigerian woman. The head of WTO is a Nigerian woman. But if you look at the body politics of the country, or you look at women who are voted into power, we are not there yet. So one of the things we want to be able to work on is creating more gender representation, both in politics, in the private sector, and other areas, because Nigerian women have shown they can do it. So this is the kind of things that our UNDP's contribution to the agenda, what we call Agenda 2030 SDGs, and the government's own national development plan.
So how are you actually confronting the structural obstacles, concerning gender equality?
One is the entire issue of how we've been engaging, and there's been a lot of Nigerian women working on this, and the UN Women as well, on how do we, is there a potential of changing the constitution to have quotas for women? That's one of the big debates that's ongoing, and it's been ongoing in the parliament, not successful in the House of Rep. But Nelson Mandela said, everything is impossible until it's done. Yeah. So this may seem impossible, but we can't give up, because the future of Nigeria, a prosperous future of Nigeria, cannot be one without women having equal representation. It just won't happen. So we have never, you show me a developed country, I will show you a country that has more women in political decision making, more women across. So this is the kind of things that we want to be engaging. But we do a lot of things. How do we create a condition for women to run for offices? What do we do in introducing barriers for women to compete, education? And so this is what we are all involved in, and this is what we'll continue to involve in. And it's not charity. I keep telling people, women's inclusion is issues of right, but it's also issues of economic prosperity, right? You will not prosper if half of your country outside. People always use this analogy of football. Imagine the Super Eagles or any cricket game, whatever sports you have, you put half of your team. How will you win?
You wouldn't.
You wouldn't. So
playing against the other 11.
Exactly. No. So the other side, or they say half of the moon, is the women's side. So we really have to. Get over.
Women actually are in larger number in the world.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm glad to see NTA takes women leadership and women's participation. So we have you here, and I hope there are many more NTA women in important positions as well.
NTA is on the vanguard, actually advocating for Nigerian women everywhere to be placed on top.
Fantastic.
Now you talked about linking. I mean, you linked poverty and planet.
Yes.
You link them together, as in they have a link, poverty and planet. Now, Strategic Plan 2022-2025, the bold, ambitious plan you call it, we learned is structured around 3 by 6 by 3 or something. Is it 3 by 6 or 3 times 6 times 3? Mean what does that mean? Because I see it.
So no, we know in the UN sometimes we have too much jargon, so it's good to break it. Jargons.
So can you?
It's good. No, it's more of what we call signature solutions. We have signatures. We call them signature solutions. We have 6 signature solutions, and then we look at what are the enablers of the signature solutions. But our signature solutions, as I said, they are poverty inequality, access to energy, gender equality, resilience. Really, really important. And we talked about resilience to shocks, resilience to the world, to climate change. How do we... So we have 6 areas, and then we have what enables those 6 areas. Partnership is one of them. How do we get collaboration? So this is what we call. But for us, I just want to say our strategic plan is meant to contribute to the country's own plan. Nigeria is a sovereign country. And we're here to support the plan of the government and the people of Nigeria. So our is to tell. So when I come here and your government asks me why are you here, we're here to contribute to your plan. We can't come and say this is our plan and we will this is the plan we'll be doing. So it's important for the viewers to know our strategic plan is an offer to contribute to agenda, the SDGs and the government's own national development plan.
On that note, I would like to thank you, Mr. Yahaya, for coming on Diplomatic Ties.
Thank you very much for having me. I had fun.
Thank you. Our discussion has centered on United Nations Development Program UNDP 2022-2025 Strategic Plan. How far so far? And we have had the privilege of hosting the country representative of UNDP in Nigeria, Mr. Mohammed Yahya, who has brought us up to speed with achievements, successes, challenges, and future developmental plans of the world's largest development-oriented organization, the UNDP. Diplomatic Ties returns same time next week. On behalf of the crew, this is Nancy Godiangunihu signing off.